Newcastle send shockwaves through the fan base with their shock transfer dealings going into the summer transfer with £50 million in debt. They could have sold Isak. They could have sold Gordon. His head has now been turned, according to sources. How did Newcastle get themselves into this mess? Is this chaos in the Newcastle boardroom, or is this a well-made plan from the ownership? Let's find out from this latest Toon Tactics episode.
Brilliant from Share, and now Murphy could take on the shot. Fabian Share
All right, so we're going to first find out how we got into this £50 million hole, allegedly, which led us to the transfer of Yakumba Minte and of obviously our very own homegrown player, Elliot Anderson. We're then going to talk a little bit about what the owner said initially, especially from Darren Eales' statement, talking about every player has a price, what that meant, how that reverberates now. And we're going to end off what my views are around how a club how I think a club who's competing for the top ought to grow, and what Newcastle are doing or have said. So let's put it on stage. I've gone back, and you guys can see on this screen right now. I've gone back to the 23-24 summer window because I think and people can say it's a combination of windows. I'm going to focus in on this window. I'm going to focus on this window that led to the £50 million overspend. And obviously that's over the 105 million that clubs are allowed to spend in the first place. And these are the first team players, obviously, apart from Yakumba Minte. Now, I've obviously kept Yakumba Minte because he's the gentleman, obviously, that we've sold for £30+ million. There are a number of other players that Newcastle have also bought, but they weren't significant. Obviously, they went into the academies and stuff like that. Sandro Tonali, Harvey Barnes, Tino Livramento, Yakumba Minte, and Lewis Hall for the somewhere roundabouts the combination of £153 million expenditure. We made an income from player sales of £44 million, which is not a lot of money at all. And what we've got to remember is that, obviously, which ended up in minus £108 million in sales. And you have to remember, we're about to speak about Darren Eales, is that when he's making that statement, you remember from January when he's saying, hey, we have to sell players before we can buy players. And I thought it was a bluff. A lot of other fans thought it was a bluff. It wasn't a bluff. We didn't have no money. So we're minus £180 million in terms of club transfers. Now, I say to you, my question is this, and guys, remember to like, share, and subscribe, and send in your comments. Let me know what you think. Out of all the players that we've bought here, is there one player or two players here that you guys would not have bought and not have got us in the position where minus £50 million? For me, there isn't one player. I think the owner said, and as they said, what Yasser Amaya said, we've got to be number one. In order to be number one, I think they said we're going to push the boat out. And nobody, and I mean nobody, could have foresaw that what I think probably also led to it. They decided to take a calculated move, calculated risk, where obviously going into the January transfer window, they had a number of sellable assets, and we're going to talk about them a little bit more specifically, that they thought they could sell. However, they never would have foreseen that would have had up to 10+ players on the injury list. And I think this really, really stifled their ability to sell more players in the January sale and the January window, which is what I think they would have aimed to do. And again, as I've asked you guys earlier, is there any players here that you wouldn't have bought that wouldn't have got us into the situation that we're in the summer transfer window? And I tell you now, there isn't. And I know that hindsight is 20/20 vision. I get that. And we've got that luxury of saying that. But at the time, who would have known, this, and that. The owners knew. And that's what I'm saying. The owners knew that when they spent £153 million, that they risked breaching the PSR, and they took that risk because you only get an opportunity to buy a player like Sandro Tonali once in a lifetime. Harvey Barnes, when are you going to get a situation where you've got Anthony Gordon and Harvey Barnes as your length going forward? When have you got a chance to have a future English right back in Tino Livramento? A star like Lewis Hall from Chelsea? It's not always going to come, and for the price. So I think they took a calculated risk. So moving forward to what Darren Eales said now in the January transfer window. And folks, remember by this time, as Mr. Eales has given this statement, we're all wondering. This is the famous statement that people keep on talking about. Darren Eales asked if every player has a price, and the news journals went out of it. Said, players have a price. That means this is when they started saying Isak's going to get sold, Gordon's going to get sold, the Bruno's going to get sold. All of this. Two things you've got to keep in mind, obviously, as we're kind of deciphering what Darren Eales actually said. Obviously, what he actually said was, as you guys can see, is if you are Darren Eales asked if there's a price, said if that's the big word here before you even go to the sentence, because he goes, no, first says yes, yes, every player has a price, and then the caveat is if you are churning players, you create more headroom. So what does he mean by headroom? We have seen lots of examples of this elsewhere. What examples, Mr. Eales? Philip Coutinho. At which point Liverpool then bought Alisson and Virgil van Dijk. So what is he saying? Because he makes other examples of Jack Grealish, Declan Rice. What he's saying is, all right, if I'm going to sell a Bruno Guimaraes, it's because I'm going to try and replicate what Liverpool did by getting Alisson and Virgil van Dijk. I'm not just going to sell Bruno Guimaraes because some team comes along and says they want Bruno Guimaraes, and we're not going to try and improve the team. So that's what Darren Eales is trying to say. The other thing I want so that's just to clear up that every player has a price pot. The other thing I wanted to add into that is Darren Eales knows that we're £50 million in the hole. That we're breaching PSR, guys. He knows this as he's saying this. The other thing he also is obviously saying in that is that look, Darren Eales comments on the January transfer window, talks about Bruno Guimaraes. Again, he says on any player, anytime, it depends on the circumstances. And this is what he's saying. He comments, after if it's possible, he'll sell Bruno or Alexander. What does he say? It is difficult to hypothesize. He says, if we're offered £1 billion for one of the players, then why not? So has anyone got £1 billion for Isak or Bruno Guimaraes? No one had £100 million for his release clause, guys. So that's what he was saying. And when he's saying this, he's not just talking to the journalist. He's talking to the agents. He's talking to rival clubs who are eyeing up Newcastle, who might suspect that they are either close to or are breaching PSR as he's speaking. And he knows this man is £50 million in debt. And he's still saying, if you've got £1 billion, we might sell them. So the other problem he has is that at this point, Newcastle's injuries have piled up. There's Saudi clubs that want to buy Miguel Almiron. There's Saudi clubs that want to buy Callum Wilson. There's Bayern Munich that want to buy Kieran Trippier. And with those three sales, we'll be okay. We won't be in debt anymore. We won't be at risk of breaching PSR. The problem is we've got 10, I don't know, folks, you send me the comments. Let me know what you think about all of this. But tell me, how many injuries do we have? We've got about 10 plus injuries at this stage. And we're in the thick of January. Have we just finished the Champions League? We're going into the Champions. I'm sure we're in the thick of the games, everything that's going on. And we need to buy players. We need to support him. And he actually says it as well. Like, we need to buy players. We can't sell any players at the moment because of the injuries we've got. And we need to buy to sell. So that's what he's in trouble of. So now they've had to, from this point forward, they've had to kick the can down the road, because if they sell Kieran Trippier, even if he wanted to go, which I think he did, if they wanted to sell Callum Wilson at that point, which maybe could have done, and Miguel Almiron, I know people are saying he didn't want to go. Maybe he didn't want to go. I suspect maybe the club said, you could, but we kind of need you right now, which we did. We couldn't sell them anyway, even if we could. Even if they wanted to go, we said, look, we're ready to go to Saudi Arabia, we're ready to go to Bayern Munich. We couldn't because we just didn't have any players. Lewis Miley, 17-year-old Lewis Miley was playing like game after game after game for us because we didn't have any midfield players. So we're not selling Miggy. We're not selling any of those guys. Sean Longstaff, any of those guys, we're not selling them. And that's where we're at. So we've had to kick the can down the road. We knew this problem had now got worse. Now, you don't tell me, maybe you're thinking we should have had a contingency plan, this, that, and the other. You'll be right. I think that contingency plan would have been on the sporting director. But we all know what happened to our sporting director in February when he was in communication with another sporting director, Barada, who was on garden leave, ironically, trying to recruit him to Manchester United. So we didn't have a sporting director in the first place, and who was altogether that interested in finding us players that we can either loan or get on the cheap and make sales and sell other players maybe on the fringes that weren't always playing. He wasn't that interested, and plus that isn't really Dan Ashworth's MO. He's not the type of guy to be constantly going from club to club, wheeling and dealing, trying to get deals over the line. He's like he's always said, he's the spoke in the middle of the wheel, bringing departments together, making sure that the under 8s are playing like the first team and 12s are playing like the first team. There's a unity, there's a philosophy. The whole club is forward. He's not there going from club to club, making 2-for-1 offers, all this type of stuff. That is not his MO. That's how we're trying to get Dougie Freedman. So that lets you know where we are. So now the risk that they took back in the summer, the Ronas, a calculated risk they took, has now become a bigger problem. And because we can't sell any players. So these are the players that we probably would have liked to sell, like we talked about: Callum Wilson, Sean Longstaff, Kieran Trippier, Jamal Lascelles, Miggy. Obviously, Jamal's injured. We couldn't have sold any of these guys in the transfer window. We're trying to sell them now, but a lot of them in the summer didn't want to go. At that point, Trippier's away with England. Almiron's away with Paraguay. Longstaff is playing cricket. And so really the main guys we're trying to sell to make up that money was going to be Callum Wilson and Kieran Trippier, and others, but Miguel Almiron, but they're away and we can't sell them. There's a whole hoo-ha about them going to Saudi or going to these lands. They're just not making the moves whilst we're in the hole. So up steps our very own Elliot Anderson, and this is where I salute Elliot Anderson, and it's been reported even in The Athletic. I recommend you guys read the article from, what's this gentleman's name on The Athletic? It was released by Inside in Newcastle's Frantic Attempts to Sell Players with PSR by Chris Watt himself on July 1st, 2024. My guy, Elliot Anderson, steps up, says, when we said, who shall go for us? Elliot Anderson says, I'll go. And he went for 30+ million. We also managed to convince Yankuba Minted to go, and we managed to make up the money. Together to boot, we also sold, we came to a compromise with Man United and got them to take Mr. Ashraf off our hands and plug in that financial hole. Now, people are all about saying this was a mess. What cowboy stuff is this? I'm so disappointed. This, that, and the other, and that, and the third, and then the third. And they're not wrong. It wasn't. I'm not here to say you're wrong or right for feeling like this. I just look at it from a different perspective. My perspective is that the club took a calculated risk because in order to grow in the Premier League, especially when you have a smaller revenue as we do have, is to take risks. People have to remember Tottenham, who are in the top 6, the bottom of the top 6, have a revenue of 440 million, We have a revenue of 250 million. We have very little headroom, as Darren Eales has said, and we've still managed to keep Joe Linton on the books, Gordon on the books, Barnes on the books, Isak on the books, Bruno Gomes on the books. 5 players, 3 of them blue chip players. Not every club gets to do that. And we took the risk. We bought more players in Livramento and Hall, in Tonali, who will also prove to be a blue chip player, in my opinion. And I don't blame Wilson, I don't blame Almiron, Kieran Trippier. They've also got their careers. And we gave them a contract saying 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. This is our contract with you. They're simply abiding by their contract. And so that's the agreement that they made. So I don't blame them for staying. And so we've had to sell players that I don't think we would have wanted to sell. Here's my earlier, from folks that would have watched this video before, players that I thought would keep and sell and possibly either way. I had even Joe Linton either way because he hadn't signed a contract. I had Yankuba Minte. I suspected that he could get sold. I thought we might do a part Chelsea type of situation. And obviously it's happened. I thought we're definitely selling Trippier, Wilson, Almiron, Longstaff, and Longstaff could still go as well, and a strong sell was obviously Karius. I had Elliot to keep. So the guys I thought might be either way or a strong keep, I thought we more or less keep. But we've had to sell them. Players didn't want to go, fine. And we couldn't sell players in January because of the massive injury list that we had, that people forget about that. And so the problem has tipped down into this summer window. And like I've said, by design, because we bought Yankuba Minte for such a situation like this, he's managed to perform well. He's won like the Dutch Cup, and we managed to sell him for 30+ million. Elliot Anderson, 30+ million, and we've made our money back, and including Dan Ashworth as well. And so there's that story. And so in conclusion, as I wrap up this video, these are some of the players that we want going forward. And guys, we've just completed one cycle. We're about to go into the next cycle. In my mind, and it's up to you what you want to do. And remember, folks, to like, share, and subscribe. I say to myself, if Newcastle buy Malik Tau, 30 million, Gerard Bowen, 60 million, that's 30 million pounds already. Morgan Gibbs White, 50 million. Yeah, that's going to be 140 million. And maybe top it off with a Calvert-Lewin for 20 million. How much is that? 30, 90, 140, and 170 million. There's a possibility, a real possibility that we could sell we could buy 170 million pound worth of players. We've already sold about, obviously for last year's accounts, about whatever. I don't know how many we're going to sell for this year. We've still got Wilson to go, Almiron to go, and that we'll see how much we make. But we could buy 170 million. This cycle, this risk, Newcastle, every time they buy these players, take this risk. And I'm glad they're taking this risk, because I feel like playing Champions League, and I feel like winning the cup. Not even winning the cup, I feel like challenging for the league and doing it on a regular basis. I don't want the club to be bankrupt. I don't want us to go 10 points in deductions, but we have to take the risk. To take the risk and the only other ways, because actually the other thing that Eales said was we either sell players or we increase our financial revenue. So we go around the world, to Japan, to Australia. That's why I didn't take it too kindly personally when Kieran Trippier, and unfortunately my own legend, Alan Shearer, started complaining about that stuff. And I kept on saying, well, what else do we do to make money then? So we have to take these tours, and we should be blessed, because I remember when we were trying to get friendlies with York and they didn't want to do friendlies with us. Now people are asking us to go to worldwide tours. We might have to build a new stadium, guys. Or we sell Lewis Miley. How about that? Or we buy players. We've got this young man from Serbia, from Pivlas. He might get sold for 30 million. In order to get your cups, as you guys can see, Premier League, FA Cups, League Cups, Champions Leagues. You guys tell me what you want to do. I think we took a good risk. I believe in it. Let me know what you think. And till next time, take care. God bless. Like and subscribe. Take care, guys.